Well, hi there, everyone. I'm Michelle Teague from A Teague of Your Own.
And I'm Betty Novak from Life Path Associates, LLC.
Welcome to Coffee with Two Coaches. We're glad that you could tune in for our podcast. Betty, I know you and I wanted to talk this time about some of the layoffs that are beginning to happen again. We saw this a couple of years back at the beginning of COVID, but now we're starting to see it again. What do you think's happening?
Well, I think now it's being coupled with an economic fluctuation. I think, and more pundits are talking about the R word, the recession. And like Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan, he said, there's a great hurricane coming. And he says it's a recession. And my sister knew him. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think what I'd like to see is if the layoffs are happening and if the companies are freezing their hiring, there still are opportunities out there. You just have to dig deeper. If you got laid off or you applied to something and it froze, there is a way to sort of find out and sort of get in front of them. Because even though they say it is for the general public, I knew that before because sometimes agencies would do that. And then you talk to somebody, you talk to HR, and they'd say, why don't you come back in like a month or two? But you're at the top of the list type of thing. So you can get HR in corporations sometimes to say things, or managers, if you've had informational interviews with them or made contact, you may call them and just say, I'm sort of checking in and I saw that your company is freezing the hiring.
Yeah, you're
What
right.
would you say? Yes, I do.
I can remember several years ago when government positions would be frozen. Everything, there were no hirings. They wouldn't even have lateral moves. They would just freeze everything. And you're right. The HR people would say, look, we really want to bring you in. We suspect something will happen within the next couple of months. Give us a call in 6 to 8 weeks and check back and see, because we'd like to get you in here.
Now, the agencies could get around that. They could promote from within when somebody was promotable. And that's not really a part of the hiring freeze. So I just wanted to say that, if you look, you applied for a job and you didn't get it and it wasn't up on the board anymore. So
yeah. So when it comes to the people who are being laid off, there's a couple of different ways that you can approach this. You can look at this as an opportunity or a blessing in disguise, because now you're freed up to go out there and find something different. I still think there's a lot of opportunities out there for people who are looking for just the right job.
Yes, I agree. I think there are different groups of people that are out there. And there are people that started working from home, but still continue with their company, whether they liked them or not, and then there are people that at the end of our pandemic, so to speak, we're in the post-pandemic or endemic period, that they just decided they were going to resign, and they just see what happened because they were getting supplements from the government. And then there are other people that just decided not to return at all. Well, and my fear is those that weren't working during the lockdown, that their skills have gotten really old.
I agree.
They may have more trouble getting the job that they finally decide that they want to get.
Yes, I think if you just sat around, didn't do anything to keep up with your skills, let alone add it to them, over the past 2 years, you're going to have a difficult time, because over the past 2 years, things have changed. Technology has changed. And you're right. If you haven't grown your skills personally and professionally, that's going to put you in an awkward position for when you're trying to find that new job, or you're looking to get hired because you haven't kept up with what's going on out there.
Now, if I can say this, I think later, like in a later episode, that we should talk about if you're an executive or manager, what are the skills that you really should be learning? Because there are new skills out there that people are going to expect managers, middle managers, and even executives to have, because the landscape has changed drastically since we're doing hybrid organizations. Whether you're doing it or not, it's still, it's changing drastically. And, the Zoom interviews, some of the young people were like, I can do this. This is really great. But people like me is like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? I'm just sort of you're helping me, Michelle, become comfortable with a Zoom. And so I have a head start because I have you as my coach for that.
Well, and to that point, it's not just Zoom. There's multiple platforms out there that people are using to just conduct interviews. Google has their Meets, Microsoft has Teams. So you've got various platforms, and if you're not aware of them, and if you don't understand how they work, you're already behind the curve just for the interview process.
I just upgraded my Microsoft suite and got Teams. I'm going to have to learn it because my coaching clients use Teams and they'd like to see me. Yes. So I said, okay, I'll have to do something about that. So.
Exactly. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, when people get laid off, some of them, they're not very happy about it. Some of them will look at this as a catastrophe. Some of them will want to play the blame game. What have you ever had a client where that happened? And if so, what did you do with them?
Yeah. Well, there are a few things we had to go through. We had to find out why they felt that, and did they, what if they could do anything they wanted to do, what would they do, and what type of company or organization you want to work for, or would you want to work for yourself?
Right.
Then we started that, and then we talk about some of the emotions that they're feeling that might be getting in the way. Let me just say something. I have had a number of layoffs. Is that good or bad? No, it's just that companies changed. Yes. They merged, or one of them even went into bankruptcy, and I just barely got out of it with a check. But I saw all of those after I got over and I help my clients, after you get over the shock of the whole thing, then you start thinking, well, maybe it's good.
Yes.
Now, during recessions, it's a little harder. There's a hidden job market, but give yourself a break and say, maybe I want to do something new, or I want to do the same thing with somebody new.
Yes, I know. I was laid off several years ago when a company had merged together with somebody else, and they were getting rid of duplicate positions.
Yep,
and you're right. What happens is the first question you ask is why? Why did it have to be me? And that's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is, how can I take advantage of this? Because more than likely you're getting some kind of severance package. People generally get something when they're told that you're no longer needed and you need to go away. When people are being laid off, there usually is some type of severance package, and depending on how long you were with the company, it can be something that can be substantial for you. And like you said, Betty, at that point, you can take a look and say, do I enjoy what I'm actually doing? Am I getting enough out of this to where I'm happy, where I actually like what it is that I do? Or do I need to look at going into something different? Are there different industries? Are there different positions? Is there something else out there that I would be happier doing? And that's actually the ideal time to make that switch.
Well, some people have been volunteering in their community, their church, or even just in organizations that's a nonprofit. And I ask them, how'd you feel about that? Because every time you're talking about it, it's like you're a whole different person, you get very excited and everything. And then I say, do you want to work for a nonprofit? They don't pay as much, but if it gives you emotional heart, uplift, then that's what you're going to do. A lot of people that are my age, that are in their third quarter before they totally retire, they end up leaving because they do have enough money. But you said something about leaving. When an organization is laid off, what I suggest is, and this happened to me, is you look at who did you know that had power? And if they were laid off, where did they go? And 2 jobs, I was called in by the vice president and president of 2 places that I was in. And they called and said, we need you to come and be a regional training manager for us because you did it before. And so that happened to me twice. And then I got a referral by a consultant that I met at a professional organization. That's another place, go to a professional organization. And she just said, I heard that this company that I'm doing work with is looking for a supervisory training specialist. And then out of that, I became a manager of education for that company. So there are ways and people to talk to. Recruiters aren't necessarily the people you go to. I hate to tell you that. I mean, unless you really know how to manage a recruiter, which there are things that are, there are readings and recommendations on how to really maximize your time with the recruiter. So I'm not saying you don't work with a recruiter, but work with your own alliances first. Yes. Inventory yourself and be clear what you want to do.
Take a look at some of the influencers that you have worked with in the past. Take a look at some of the people who are in leadership positions and ask yourself, what type of a relationship do you have with them? Can you go to them and say, hey, I'm available. If you know of a position that's open, I am available at this point in time, and I would love to work with an organization that has you as part of it. And you're right, start using the network of people that you have and use that to your advantage to find something to move into.
Well, another thing you can do is you can create a bridge job for yourself. I had to do that between the hair cuttery and going into the federal government. I ended up working for 2 federal contractors and trained supervision and trained administration and all sorts of things. And then my husband was in it. It helped me. My husband had been in the federal government for 20-something years, so he helped write my resume. But having said that, I know of a lot of people, executives, managers, people who are experts in a field that is important, that they form their own consulting group. They're consulting and they go freelance just so that they can become visible and know which companies, which agencies will be hiring next, because they're not freezing out spending necessarily. Sometimes they do, and then another thing I was told by somebody, why don't you go volunteer? Ask it, say, can I volunteer and help you in some way? And, just maybe that person says, down the road, help me. And then at the end of this, you'll have a job.
Well, and to that point, when you're volunteering, you're at least keeping up with the skills. And we talked about that earlier, how important it is to keep your skills up to date. And if you're at least out there doing some volunteer work, your skills aren't eroding.
Yep. I mean, I even see some skills eroding from me to a certain extent because, we're so focused on what our business is all about. And there are still some skills that I know I need to learn to be able to market my business better. So that's not, or you hire somebody if you're a CEO of your business. But going back to people, yeah, those are the things you look at your alliance, make a list of everybody. It can be friends, it can be family, it can be your minister, it can be teachers, or professors that you had if you had to graduate from college or postgraduate.
Mhm.
It can be people talk about that most cities have business times, and they have lists of who's really moving where and who are the influencers there. Sometimes you can ask for a informational interview just to find out more about what they've done and how their company runs. And you at least find out information that you could use to market yourself either to them or to another company.
Well, and the other thing is if they've left a job, obviously there's an opening now because wherever they moved from is going to have to do their best to fill that position. So keep that in mind also when you're looking, like you said, at the Business Times, and you're seeing these people who are moving up into a different position. That means there's an opening out there, and if that's what you're looking to fill, that's who you need to contact.
Yeah, that brings up another point. All the doom and gloom is out there, but there are companies out there that want to survive. They may be downsizing, but they're not totally. They need managers, leaders, and experts that are in that, experts that like scientists or accountants or whatever, to go to fill slots. But because I'm the baby boomer, so my generation was retiring. But I heard today from some of them that on Business Channel that some of them are having to go back in. They're being called back in after the pandemic because they know how to run their organization. And eventually they're going to say, I don't think so. I'm going to Florida and have a good time, So, but the millennials need to move up. Then the Gen X's and the Y's need to move up. And so if you're the only ones that are there, then start looking around and see how you can move into another slot, even if it's only temporary, with the idea that it would be permanent.
Succession planning is so important for organizations. We could talk for days just about succession planning. One of the clients that I had that I did training for, they were in the process. One of the reasons they brought me in for training was to train their mid-level leaders in the hopes that they could take some of them and move them up into executive roles. And when I gave them the feedback, it wasn't what they expected, because the people that they thought were going to be ready to move up into leadership roles further up into the company had no plans. They had they didn't want to do it. They truly, all they wanted to do was work out until they retired and then leave. And part of the problem with that is when people leave, they're literally taking their experience and their wisdom with them. And if you don't have somebody ready who they've been pouring their experience and their knowledge and their wisdom into, if you don't have that person ready to fill their shoes when they're gone, literally your entire history is walking out the door with them.
I think that's why companies go after the people that leave and say, can you come back and consult? Because some of those people have created consulting firms that are making a lot of money. The other thing is people tend to hold close what they do because they're worried that during their career, they learn how to do this, that if somebody knows their job, they're going to get their job.
Mhm.
And so when somebody, unless, like you said, the company says, look, you're leaving in a month or two, I need you to work with so-and-so because they're going to be taking your place and you know everything. And we'd like you to be on call for another couple months because that person's going to be so lost unless they've been working by your side.
Right. And if you're planning on retiring and you truly want to walk away and unplug and just leave it all behind you, you need to prepare that other person. You need to prepare multiple people because it's going to take a little while for them to be able to fill that role. And so you need to work months ahead of time, not just days, not just weeks, months ahead of time to get that person ready.
Well, that's HR and their C-suites, goals or things that they have, responsibilities that they have to do. The other thing that I've been hearing is that once a person who has been in a position and we're talking middle management and senior management, not up in the C-suite, that once they leave, HR fills that position with two people and they split the baby. And that's happening a lot more. So
Yeah,
you might find out that somebody got it and you go in and say, can I be their partner,
correct. And that's how you're creating more jobs out there too, is when you realize that you've been doing the work of 2 or 3 people and you figure this out after you left and they have to hire 2 or 3 people to take your place. That's how you know you're onto something, because then you're right, you can go back and be a consultant to that company and you can make a lot of money off of doing that.
Yeah, because usually you have a clause that says for a year or two you can't work for the competition, but you can consult to other types of companies that aren't competing.
So I have a feeling when we get together next time, because we've been talking about the workers who are being laid off and we've been looking at it from their perspective. I think what we may want to do next time we get together is take a look at this from the perspective of the company themselves and take a look at what it is that they're facing, take a look at some of what they're having to go through, because we haven't really explored that part of what's going on in this process. And I think that would be a really good topic for us to pursue.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be good. So.
All right, everyone. Well, we will see you in a couple of weeks. Join us again for Coffee with Two Coaches. You can catch us every other week. We would love to have some feedback from you. You can always reach out to us and let us know what topics you would like to hear from. And if you need to get in contact with us, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are here for you. So thanks for joining
we
us.
even have an email.
We do have an email.
coffeewithtwocoaches@gmail.com. That's coffeewithtwocoaches@gmail.com. So please, send any of your suggestions, send any of your feedback, even your impressions, or what you learned from the show. So please, and it's been a pleasure.
Yes.
For this hour talking about this topic.
It's been fun. All right, everybody. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for joining us.